Yep, I am here. All right, so I'll put it open to see if anybody else wants to do it. If not, I will. So, do we have any volunteers out there? All right, I will do it. Mhm. Okay. Yep. And I think another thing is going in and actually explaining what some of the actual commands are really doing, especially within that third part, because you're talking about the URL map and what's actually happening there, and then doing some as long as we have the time to get through that part, is doing some extra checks like verifying that the the instances are actually being presented to the internet, and just make sure, like, looking at the firewall and what commands the task that you have for that. So I've got some of those things, and I'll make sure I bring that up.
Yeah, so I am working on it. The question I had was the labs to date are like the final part of the project, right? I mean, whatever session that you had. So, uh-huh. Okay. Okay. So, if I join in at this point of time, will I be able to catch up with whatever has happened before, or? Mhm. Uh-huh. Mhm. Uh-huh. Mhm. Oh, okay. So yeah, I'll just sign in and then log out of the quest and then open a new one in incognito is what I'm supposed to do. Set up and configure. Okay, got it. So,
Yep. So if everybody's registered or if everybody good, if you have any questions, please post that in the chat and we can respond in kind and help you troubleshoot as needed.
so
Yeah, I'm enrolled, got the credits and everything squared away.
All right. Thank
um,
you.
I just signed in. What am I supposed to enroll into? Okay. Okay. So,
I tried that and it did not. Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna reach out to you later today about that and discuss that with you. Yeah. Okay.
So, Cedric, I enrolled in the quest by putting in the code. Do I need to enroll now? Or oh, okay,
All right. So
got it.
I'm gonna go ahead and jump over to the quest.
Quick question for you just before we proceed. So I already have the 5 units, 5 credits. So is that the point where I want to be, or is there something else to do beyond that?
No, that's where you want to be. Once you complete the quest and get the badge, you should get um the 200 credit for the rest of the month. I think that's how that works.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
All right. So, before we start, just gonna go over some of the ones for people that are just joining for the first time. So the first lab, the tour of Quick Labs and Google Cloud goes through the GCP platform and the console. So how you access the different resources, and just a brief overview, projects, resources, um, and everything, even launching the Cloud Shell. So just a little 30-minute, just a quick tutorial to go through. Um, it's pretty straightforward. No real gotchas there. The second lab is the creating a virtual machine. So from the GCP console, actually going through the menu and actually launching just a basic Linux virtual machine. Um, just again, really straightforward, but it shows you all the small components and how to install it. Um, using GCP for basic um, virtual machine instances, that's one of the most easiest things, and it's really a good quick resource. So experiment with that. Come back to it and look at it a couple of times. But again, that is the just going through the GCP console. um, there's a similar lab, and you see that I because I've registered and unregistered a couple of times, it doesn't show that I've completed it, but it's the Windows Quick Start. So Windows machines are a little different from Linux, of course. But when you go in there, it shows you some backend components, such as the serial console, where you actually see that machine booting up, getting access to the admin password, verifying that the install is completed, and then getting that RDP access. So um, not necessarily a lab that you have to do. And you see here, as long as you're creating a virtual machine of some sort, it's one lab or the other. But this is something that you might want to look at down the road, depending on where you go within other labs in the future. The next lab is the G Cell and the G Cloud. So this lab goes into more understanding of how the Cloud Shell, the terminal session within the GCP console, and gcloud is the commands that are that you execute within the shell itself. um, and it also talks about the SDK. So the SDK you can use on a Windows machine, on a Linux machine, and actually have that and not actually run your commands through the console. As you see on the screen that I'm sharing, I actually have a Linux machine that is there and available. I'm gonna run the labs actually through using gcloud and the SDK. So I did the software install of that, and I'll execute everything from there. All right. Then the next lab is the Kubernetes engine. So going in, and we actually start up um, a cloud-based Kubernetes instance. We start the engine and we deploy an app there. So if you're um, learning containers and learning Kubernetes, this is a interesting quick start guide for that. So going through the basic steps and running it in a cloud environment is really a good way to get started with that. All right. The last lab before the challenge is the setting up the network and HTTP load balancers. So deploying some type of resource, VMs, applications, and then putting a load balancer on the front end, so externally facing the internet, and also putting a load balancer in, pointing towards the backend resources. So there's different scenarios in here, and they go through the various different ways to configure that. And so that is a very, very, I'm going to say, detailed lab with the steps. So going through there a couple of times in order to really get a good understanding is very good. Also, within here, and this is the one that I'm going to point out the most, there are a couple of links in here that go into GCP that discuss about the network load balancing and the building of the actual HTTP and HTTPS load balancer. So spending a little time of reading through that material is very important within understanding how those load balancers work. Okay. So I'm gonna go back here. Anybody have any questions um, about any of those labs at this time?
Nope.
No. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and kick off the Create and Manage Cloud Resources Challenge Lab. So inside this lab, we have 3 basic tasks. We want to create a VM instance. We want to deploy a 3-node Kubernetes cluster and run a simple service. Then we're going to create a HTTP load balancer on the front end of 2 web servers. So just scrolling down, we'll go through our authentication. We'll verify our resources. Within the challenge lab, we have some requirements that are important here. All of our resources will be created in the default region and default zone unless otherwise specified. When we launch our resources, we want to use the format of team-resource. So we're going to use this nuclei, and then whatever resource we're using will have that dash name behind it. Last one here is we list the, we want to be cost effective with our resource sizes. So when we deploy machines, we want to make sure we're using specific standards for our resources. And those are all of our basic requirements. So task 1, I'll be creating that jump host instance. So we attribute this to creating just launching a virtual machine, just a CPU resource. We're going to name that instance nucleus jump host. We'll use that machine type, and the default machine inside of GCP is a Debian Linux machine. So should be relatively straightforward. We'll launch that and we'll do our check. And also, as you do your checks here, if you get stuck, you can always go in and verify your resource here. And it gives you some hints to what's actually happening there. So I'll make sure I come in and click this from time to time as we launch various parts of the task. Task number 2 is going to be creating that Kubernetes service cluster. So we need to make sure that we start it in our default zone. The image we're actually going to use is the hello app. And here is the image that we're going to use to launch. And at the end of it, we want to make sure we expose it to the internet. So we're going to expose it to port 8080. So we're going to use that expose load balancer. And last but not least, this is the big one. We're going to go in, we're going to create the resources and set up this HTTP load balancer. So we'll need to deploy 2 web server instances. So instead of just deploying 2 web servers by themselves, we're going to do the instant template. And then we're going to launch our images from that. We have a start script that we're going to use. You're going to see it's going to install Nginx and actually create a HTTP default page for our instances. And then within the task, here's the steps that we need to do. So we're going to have that instance pool. We'll create a target pool. After we create the template, we'll then do the manage instance group. For our instances, we need to have the firewall allow TCP port 80. We'll create a health check. The health check is going to be for the load balancer to make sure the services are up. We'll attach it to the instance group. Then we'll do our redirector for our load balancer, creating the URL map. We'll create the HTTP proxy. And then we'll create a firewall rule forwarding our traffic between the load balancer to the backend. All right. Any questions there? All right.
Just a question. Why do you need a firewall between your front end load balancer and the back end? I presume if you are in the same VPC, would that be necessary?
So this firewall isn't for the traffic between the front and the back end. This is actually for the instances to access the internet. So when we stand up these web servers,
Right.
they need to be presented to the internet itself. And that's what this firewall is going to do.
Oh, but why do they need to be presented to the internet if you already have a front end load balancer for it? I
So
thought it will be the load balancer that to be exposed to the internet. Does that make sense?
exactly. And that's what I thought about this a couple of times. But
Right.
what's happening is the load balancer is redirecting to one server or the other in order to service the internet traffic. So the
Okay.
load balancer is only a pointer. So all three have to have that front interface internet because the load balancer is going to have that single IP address, but then it's going to redirect it to one of the other services or one of the other instances.
Oh, so you're saying those instances, so maybe what I'm presuming here is incorrect then, because my assumption was that those internal hosts that are in the back end, their IP address are not exposed to the internet, or are they?
They are exposed to the internet. So the URL map, when a request goes to the load balancer IP,
Right.
it's going to redirect it to one of the two web servers.
Okay. Okay.
And so, and yeah, and I want to call that out when we actually go in and do it. So when we get to adding this firewall, we can do a check there to look at the instances and verify that they are actually hitting the internet.
Okay. So you're actually going to get public IP addresses for those two internal backend hosts. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. When
Oh.
they deploy, they're gonna have an external IP address.
Oh. Okay. That
So
that's a very I mean, based on my limited experience, that's a very unconventional way of doing it. It would seem like.
okay. So when we get to that part, let's
Right.
make sure
Okay.
that we go there because I definitely want to point that out and do the check for that.
Okay.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. All right. Let's get any before I go on. Any other questions? Hmm. Yeah. Let me see if I can get it real quick. Oh, no problem. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the lab. So we have 1 hour from this point to complete it. So when you start the lab, you should be able to use subscription. So I'm gonna open my console. When I open my console, I'm gonna launch it in an incognito window. So there's that student account from the lab. The password. Agreed to what's there. All right, and I'm in my console, so I'll be executing from here. And like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to launch from using the SGK. So I'm gonna go over here to my console and do gcloud init. Kick off my resource. And the new user account here is not in the list, so I'm gonna do 8 for a new account. I get prompt for the authorization code. So keep that in my incognito window. Select the account. I'm gonna authorize my SDK. Put in my authorization code. And now that I've authenticated, I'll select my project, 947C. And so now in my SDK, I have the project and my resources. I'm using my region is US East 1. My zone is US East 1-B. So that should be similar to what's in my project. And let's get started. Correct. Yep. So please create the jump host. And it's looking for the correct machine type. All right. It just said the correct machine type. All right, so everybody should go through the steps of just getting authenticated in. And so, and remember, we want to use the N1 standard. So task 1, want to create that nucleus-jump host. We want to use the F1 micro machine type and the default image type of Debian. So that would be so our command would be something like gcloud compute instance with an S create. No, so I did because I did it from the SDK, it's automatically configured when it's there. But if I wanted to verify that, gcloud config. Think of what? Oh, I'm panicking. Config git config. Oh, need to spell gcloud right. Yeah, it is config list. So using this, it shows my compute. It shows my default region, my account, and my project. And if it wasn't set, you'd want to use the gcloud config set command to set whichever needs to be set. So you would have to look at, you definitely want to look at this if you're doing it from the cloud shell. All right. So I go back to my commands here. So creating my instance, I'll go ahead and paste this time around. So gcloud compute instances with an S, create nucleus-jump host, that's the name. And there's my machine type, F1 micro. Correct. All right, we'll wait a few for this to show up. All right. So there's that instance deployed. I'll make this a little bit bigger. So that command to see my instance, so the output of it created is there. I can do my gcloud compute instances list. And it gives me that same information. So the name of my host, my zone type, my internal IP, and my external IP. So, and we automatically check. So I've gotten my 20 points to show that it's there. Go ahead and hit my box to verify.
Cedric, I see the question I was asking you earlier. So it automatically by creating that instance, it attached an external IP address to it.
Yes.
Okay.
So if I wanted to actually connect to that box, that is there externally. SSH would be open for those machines.
Okay.
So if I did SSH, it's going to pop up. And of course, I don't have my key plugged into the instance.
Right.
This
Okay.
doesn't ask for any we didn't go through all the settings to actually have that box and be ready for that. But
Okay.
right, the firewall is going to be for task 3 for setting up the managed instances. So yeah, but like I said, we're going to go and do that. And that firewall is only for port 80. Like if I put this IP address in a browser, it doesn't work because it's not open. Correct. And the instance doesn't have a web server running on it, so it wouldn't, even if it was open, there wouldn't be nothing there.
And Cedric, just as I mentioned too, this is configuring, like specifically configuring the jump host too, right? So
Yes.
right, regarding the like the public IP and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're hitting our 10 minutes of our first hour. So our Google Meet, we're on the free edition, so we will have to start up another meeting. So we're gonna keep going through. Please look to the Slack channel for the second part of this meeting. So once this meeting ends, John will spin up another one, and everybody is just rejoined there. Yep. And John, in the chat, Tanmay is having issues with starting the lab. It's prompting him for the code. So, so Tanmay, did you hit the subscription versus the code? If you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry. So yeah, I did put in the code. I get a link of this sorts. Here it is, and I kind of am not able to start the lab. It's just asking me for access code, and if I look at my credit, it says 0. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, and enroll in this on demand quest. It's asking me to sign in again. Okay. Yeah.
No problem. It's Yeah, I think that's the next thing we need to get going. And but I think we have a I think we'll be able to work through that. No, I think that was good. Right.
Yes, I did get. Yes, I did.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So as we start here, when we drop off, we'll just rejoin. So task 2, we're going to create that Kubernetes service cluster. It needs to be in our default zone, which is that US East 1B zone. I'm actually going to kick off the command for that. So even though I have it set, I'm just going to show the command here. That'd be the, go ahead. Oh, sure. So please create Kubernetes cluster. All right, so gcloud config set compute US East 1B. So
Hey,
this would actually set my zone to the appropriate zone if it's not already set.
and John, it might be good to take screenshots of those as they pop up as well, so you can transcribe them later if you have it exactly there. You can try to pop a quick screenshot and grab that. Absolutely, that's good stuff.
All right. So now we're gonna go ahead and create that cluster, and this is a good time where that spins up while we switch over to our next session. So to create a cluster, Kubernetes cluster, it's gonna be gcloud container clusters create. Gonna name that cluster nucleus dash cluster, and we're gonna do number of nodes is gonna be 1. Yep. And I just did cluster because of it being the cluster versus Kubernetes.
Just a quick question for you, Cedric. This command that you're using right now, how did you come up with that, or what helped you come up with that? Did you have to go through the man pages, or how exactly did you
So
do it?
I worked through the actual tabbing through the command.
Oh,
So
okay.
using the dash help.
All right. Okay. Got you. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so
quite a
it'll give you there's a whole bunch that you can do with any of these commands, but just
all right.
going in and just getting that default.
Right.
And if you go back to the actual um the resource the lab for creating the cluster, it'll go through some of this as well.
All right. Okay. Well, that's quite a long list of options there.
Hey, John,
Oh,
just a quick, Cedric, just a quick question. I was creating an VM instance. How do I select the F1 version, like the F1 micro machine type?
okay. That's gonna be the machine type dash, then space,
So
um,
I was
or
doing it through the what do you call? the GUI rather than the shell.
Okay, so there, the F1 machine type does not show up.
Yeah, so that's why I was wondering what's the issue.
Okay, so if you let me bring that up.
So do I just go and do a shell instead?
Yes.
Okay. Activate Cloud Shell. I guess I'm assuming I'm doing that.
So yeah, if you go here and
I just launched the shell. What's the command I need to put in?
oh, did I-
Hello. Fine.
no problem. All right. So let me do a couple of things here. So for creating an instance, this would be the command you'd want to deploy.
Instances create.
I'll post that in the chat as well.
Okay.
And for the cluster, da, 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 da. There we go.
Okay, got that running.
Yep. And it takes a minute or two for this to spin up, so we wait. Yes.
So when I do that, I get an error saying that zone and region must be specified.
Okay. So you want to do the gcloud config set
Okay.
compute zone and the region. So let me here.
Okay, keep out. Let's.
Oh no, I completely understand.
you. Yeah, it does take a while. Yep, gives the zone and the region. That seems all right.
All right. And if you need to remove your instance, that'd be a gcloud keep instances delete. All right. So now my cluster is created.
It's working on creating the cluster. Why are we doing the delete of the instance? Are we?
No, that's just a command that if you needed to your compute instance, if you needed to delete it,
Uh-huh.
that's the command for it. So I'm just posting that
Okay,
there.
okay, got it. Thank you.
All
I
right.
think the last time I created something was using the interface, so that's the reason why I was wondering. I don't think I remember using the shell too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the more that I've been doing this, the ease of use of the shell is just I'm definitely getting more comfortable with doing it. So and
Yeah, I get
I'm
that. Since we are kind of new to that, I think it takes time to remember all those commands.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's all I guess.
All right. So if I do my check here, I only have 10% of my cluster creation. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit my check progress. And it gives me the error message that I need to expose my service. So the cluster created, but I have not configured my app. So the next thing I want to do is actually obtain the credentials for my cluster in order to be able to um, to actually deploy a service. So that's going to be my gcloud container clusters get credentials and the cluster name. So this is going to go to my cluster. It's going to pull out my config file, and under my ls t under my .cube, there's going to be a config file here, and this is the credentials for my cluster.
Cedric, can you just show me the command again for getting the cluster information?
Sure.
Cloud.
And I'll post that as well. All right. And I'm gonna
Okay.
all right.
Mhm. Okay.
All right. So now that we have a cluster, a Kubernetes cluster deployed, and we have the credentials applied to my system, I'm going to now use kubectl commands to actually deploy a service. So kubectl create deployment hello server. So that's the name of the deployment I'm deploying. And the image I'm deploying is that image grc.io google-samples hello app version 2.0. Yeah. That should happen rapidly. So it shows that it's created. I go to my check. It's still going to fail out because we're looking to expose that service to the internet. So my last command is that exposing with a load balancer type. So, and again, this is a kubectl command. So kubectl expose deployment hello server type load balancer, and it's going to be port 8080. And this is generic. So we're specifying a load balancer for the Kubernetes container or Kubernetes cluster for this specific port. Correct. So if you want to verify your service, and what I'm looking for is that external IP. Again, this is one of those checks. So my Kubernetes cluster is given this external IP. So if I take that and go to my browser, I should be able to see my hello server. As soon as it's ready. It's not ready yet. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
For here, this is all they've required. And I'm wondering, no, I believe this should come up. I think I checked this before. Or at least I thought it came up. Yep. Spin, spin, spin. Yep, so there's my endpoint. Oh, nobody, y'all just let me do that and didn't catch that. Still don't have the port. There we go. Hello world. Not gonna say how many times I've done that, but anyway. All right, so creating a cluster, check. Instance, check. Now it's time for the big one. And we've got 25 minutes. If we don't get it, we can always reset, so don't worry. So, and all right, now comes the fun stuff. So the one thing that I did here is we have this startup script, and I actually take this startup script and I made a file. So cat in the file to startup.sh, this contents, and in within a file. So let me do that again. Sure. Okay. So the common error is all right. We'll step it through and see what happens. So let's go ahead and do this. And I'm just going to copy that from there. So it's going to create that file.
Cedric, quick question. Since you're using the SDK, you've created the file. If you're just using the shell on the browser, does it make sense to create the file?
Yes. So within the Cloud Shell, you get 5 gigs of storage space when you create the profile for your shell for your account when you log in.
Oh, okay, got it.
And of course, with Quick Lab, once you finish the lab, that account gets removed anyway.
Okay, sounds good.
Good questions, though. All good topics to discuss. All right, so now that I've created that file, I'm going to use that in the creation of my instances or my instance template. So what I'm going to do is a couple of things. So let's create this instance template. So to create an instance template is going to start with gcloud compute instance template create. Gonna need some template names here. And I'm gonna call that web server template. I'm gonna space that out. And this is the important part where I go and I'm gonna do this is where I reference the startup script. So -- metadata from file, startup -script, and then the file that I created, startup .sh. It's in the directory, so I'm using the relative path. Slash to my next. And then my machine type And the machine type we're actually using is G1 small for the managed resources. They don't necessarily put that in here. So I've gone out to ask for the help on that. So we use the G1 small. If you use the F1, it's going to say that that's not found. So, and I'll just scroll up to the top of that and point that out. Technically, I could create it, but where was it? When they call for the resources here, they talked about this F1 micro. This will not allow us to deploy from the instance template. So you have to use the G1 small. All right, so let me go ahead and create this. And I will post it.
Is that an error in the lab then?
I'm going to say it's not necessarily an error in the lab. I think they have updated their resource types.
Oh, I see.
So at a minimum, we could reach out to Quick Labs and get them to edit that one component.
Okay. So how did you discover this? I'm just curious.
I went out and asked for the help on it. If I was to deploy a VM template with the F1, you actually get a error message that resource is not found.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So let me go here. If I run a check, I still don't have nothing because I don't actually have the instances deployed yet.
Quick question, Cedric. Why are we creating templates in this case?
Because 2 steps down from this, we're going to create 2 VM instances.
Okay.
And instead of running the instance create command 2 times, we'll
Okay.
just run the manage group create, and it will create 2 instances within the one command.
Oh, okay.
The
Got it.
manage group also gives you the ability to scale up. So you could actually go back and request another node, and it would just build it off of this same template.
Okay. Got it.
Right. Yeah. I did not create, I ran everything off the default network. All right. So the second task in this list is creating the target pool. We'll need the target pool a little bit further down. So let me go ahead and create that.
So this template is for the VM instance, right? Or is it for the cluster?
It's for the VM instances. So as far as the configuration for the cluster, we're done with everything that was required for the Kubernetes cluster.
Okay. So is there a possibility where you could like create templates for clusters as well and then use those?
That's a good question. I don't think there is. Let's take a look. So gcloud container -- help. Container group.
Yeah, it looks like it's just for managing it.
Yeah.
And I mean, aren't there too many, a lot of things to specify when creating it? I mean, it's
I
like
don't know.
basically like almost like saying a pre-built application, so to speak. So, I mean, all the images and everything and all the authentication and creating a cluster would have to, I mean, all of that would have to be scripted individually. So
Yeah,
it's
I
almost
feel.
like creating an application in a service.
Yeah, thanks, Gene. I feel like the clusters, they may not have a template for multiple clusters per se, because they're also going to have their own unique credentials and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely something to research. Not necessarily on the ACE exam, but yeah. Okay, good question. We'll have to circle back. We'll see if we can find an answer for that. Where was I? Oh, creating target pools. All right, so G-Cloud Compute target pools create. And I'm gonna name my pool Nucleus Pool. Save that for later. All right, my pool's created. Still shows my region there. Now we're gonna go ahead and create the instance group. So we do our G-Cloud Compute instance groups with an S, manage, create. My instance group, I called it web server with abbreviations. Web server group. Then I specify my size, dash size 2. So that's going to give me my 2 instances. In my template, and that was, what was my template? Web server template. Abbreviated that better. And I put in my target pool. And nucleus pool. All right. So size of 2, my web server, my instance group template, and my target pool. And this should spin up my 2 instances. If I go and look at my compute engine, we'll see that I have 2 machines that are being deployed. And we're waiting for those to spin up. If I look at G-Cloud, compute, instances list. Oh, I spelled something wrong. Computes with an S. We'll see my boxes turn up. And because that name started with the template name, those are my 2 web servers. And they have external IP addresses. And if I was to go to either one of these addresses and go to the web, right now they don't show up. And this is where we don't have that firewall access. All right. So now, more exciting stuff. And they're still spinning too. And if I go back here and do my check, let's see what we get. Still waiting for them to be created with 2 web servers. So we'll let this sit for a minute. We only have 9 minutes, so this is going to end and we'll just start it back over. Oh, no, as far as when I started the lab, yep. So while we're waiting for those instances to come online, I'm going to restart the lab. But what I've actually done within my Linux session here is I actually have 2 scripts. Well, technically I have 3 scripts, but I have 2 scripts that actually kick off and complete task 1 and task 2. So when I restart the lab, I'm just going to fire off the scripts and it'll automatically complete task 1 and task 2 since we already have that done and set up. All right. So now they're there. And again, if I do my restart, neither one of those are going to show up as expected. If I do my check here, still looking for my front end. So this is where I create that firewall rule for my instances. So G-Cloud Compute firewall rules create www firewall and allow TCP port 80. So creating firewall rule. So that is now there. Port 80 should be open. Web server 1 and web server 2. So they're now there. And Musa, and this is what I was talking about. So both those firewalls, both those web servers are now available to the internet.
All right.
So if this was an application that I was servicing, both of these servers are there, but they're not tied. There's nothing that ties them together to be the same resource right now. They're two separate IPs. They're two separate web servers. And then we go in, and the load balancer, the whole purpose of that is to make sure we're coming to one IP, and then the backend is being serviced by both, or
Right.
both are being serviced, I guess.
Okay.
So now I have 5 points. Absolutely. So we've gotten 5 points, and all we're getting is just please create the managed service group with 2 instance firewall servers. So it doesn't really tell us anything else. All right. So now the next thing we need. No, this is one of the instances, one of the VM instances that we just created that has a web server on it. And we got that whole install and that configuration came from the startup script. All right. So originally that's what I thought was going on, but the Kubernetes cluster, we're not tying the web server front end to this. These are 2 separate tasks altogether. So we're done with the cluster. Like if I went in right now and destroyed the cluster, this task 3 would still be going on with everything that's needed there. The instances that we create from the template and the managed instant group are the web servers that we're accessing from the backend. So the next thing that I would do is create the forwarding rule for the load balancer. And yeah, we're gonna run out here, but I'll go ahead and get this in. So gcloud compute forwarding rule create ww-lb. So that's a L, not a 1. Region, port, and target pool. And my target pool is, I believe I call it nucleus pool.
Yes.
Cool. So we create this rule. And then we're going to create a health check. And this health check is used to balance the resource for the managed group, for the instances that are going to be load balanced. Did I paste that in? I did not paste that in. Let me give you that. How much time I got? I have a minute. All right. So go ahead and create the health check. Mm-mm. Nope. We're done with everything for the Kubernetes cluster.
Hey Cedric, would it be good to like just show a diagram or something how these things are connected? I mean, that would make more sense to people.
Oh, if I had a diagram ready.
Yeah, or you could just draw it in Paint or something to just give a brief idea of how things are connected at this point of time.
Okay. So we're about to the lab should die here. Yep, in 30 seconds. So yeah. So and I'll go back here. So we created this instance.
Mm-hmm.
That was just one server that we can use as a jump host. So SSHing into that box to do activities inside of the GPC network.
Okay.
Now the Kubernetes cluster was only just the hello app itself. We deployed a service.
Mm-hmm.
Now, task 3, we go in and we create 2 individual compute instances that have web servers on them. And what we're going to do with that is use an HTTP load balancer to be on the front end of those 2 servers. So that way the web server resource is being serviced by the 2 instances. The health check makes sure that either service is actually up and available, and
Okay.
then is handling the redirection.
Okay.
I have about 6 other commands to run before the web server would actually be configured and load balanced.
Okay. Got it.
All right. So um, we're turning along here, and I need to reset the lab.
Mhm.
This is a perfect time for a 5-minute break.
Sure.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna log out, reset my services, and actually run my. Should I wait? Let's take a 5-minute break, and then I'll go through everything that I set up again, so that way everybody can see it. It's magic, but yet not magic. So I don't want nobody to miss that. So all right, let's take a 5-minute break, and we will restart and fast forward to task 3 again.
Just a quick question before we go. So, are you meaning to delete all the resources that you've created so far? Would that be part of it?
Well, yeah, I have no choice because
Oh,
once the lab time runs out,
right.
I no
All of
longer have access to it automatically deletes it.
Oh, okay. I get your point. But under normal circumstances, say for example, I've got a GCP account. If I want to do things over, I will need to delete all the resources currently created. Is that correct?
Yes, or pay for it.
Or pay for it. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Cedric.
No problem.
All
All
right.
right,
Okay.
we'll see everybody in about 5 minutes,
Okay. Sounds good.
and I'll stop sharing my screen for a little bit. I'm actually gonna stop sharing my screen and go on mute. I'll be back in a bit.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I haven't really worked on any cloud technologies, so I don't have much of a background on that. Yeah. Well, I did attend one of these sessions like a year back, or maybe 1.5 year back. Like before COVID. So it's been a long time, and I really wanted a refresher because I am kind of transitioning or looking to transition to data analytics, and I think this would play a vital role in how things are going. No, no, no. So I'm based in Toronto at this time. Yeah. Hmm. Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, I am. So I think you work with hardware, if I'm not wrong, when you were discussing stuff. So, uh-huh. Okay. Mhm. Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah. Um, s- um, so right now, basically, I started off as an electrical engineer. I've done some circuit design work and then moved into embedded programming. So, but I kind of want to move towards data science because I think you would have like different things to work on, and embedded being too vast, kind of not sure where the path leads to. No, no, no. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Well, yeah, but I think entering the ML market is basically going and doing algorithms and DS for the job, whereas you need it's not like every time unless you're like optimizing stuff, you won't really need those things over knowing the APIs and doing things right. Exactly. Uh-huh. But that doesn't apply when you're interviewing, right? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's kind of the plan. So I did the entire deep learning specialization on Coursera. But when I was applying for ML jobs, and since I'm from embedded, it creates like this thing where every time I apply for a job, they're not expecting me to know the general knowledge. They're expecting me to know about data structures and algorithms even before I join in. So that's kind of the what you could say the blocking for me making that switch.
So, so tell me, when you say data structure, what kind of data structure were they expecting you to have knowledge of?
So it's basically like every other company gives you either a lead code or hacker rank to solve.
Oh,
And since I've so my background is entirely electronics, and although I'm interested in this, so it kind of puts me on a back step since I have to actually sit down and do maybe 6 or 8 months of lead code just to get to that point where I can crack interviews.
did you find lead code helpful?
No, I didn't find it helpful. I'm just saying that it will take me too much time to make that switch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the same, well, I'm kind of in the same boat at the moment. I mean, my background is in electrical engineering, but I'm getting more and more interested in uh,
Software.
software,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to. Although I did data structure many years ago, but I never used it. So
Exactly.
right. So because the electrical engineering and the computer science curriculum, there were quite a few things they had in common, and those courses were, you know, those courses were data structures and some other uh,
So, but
theory of
it's like
computing stuff.
you never really implement those as much in the embedded side of things. So you kind of need to do a refresher and then practice to actually get to a stage where those interviews are kind of useful in a way. I mean, sitting for those interviews makes sense. So that's always the case, and with either you take like some time off and you just decide to focus on this, or you just keep going along and hope that some point somebody recognizes, okay, there are other things that you can bring to the group, and maybe take a little time, but get up to date soon.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I am back.
Hey, Cedric.
Um, so I had my screen shared, and I've just reset my session. So from my SDK from my Linux box, I restarted um, my cloud init session, so gcloud init, and put in my credentials. So I'm logged back in, and I've restarted the lab. So I have my student account deployed, and like I said, how I'm gonna get through the first two tasks is I've gone ahead and I created scripts. Nothing really fancy or anything like that, but just ask one sh. All it's doing is creating that instance. So I'll go ahead and do that. So that's done. There I get my 20 points. Move on to the next one. So task 2. Oops.
Hey, Cedric, before you, too late. Never
Oh,
mind. I was going to, I was going to ask you to cat that file just that we see it. I know we've seen it before, but I just,
oh, no problem. Once it's done, I'll go ahead and cat it. I
uh,
didn't mean to kick it off. I should have catted it first.
no problem, no problem. We need more politeness in this world.
And we're coming up at our 5 minutes before this session ends, and we'll be moving over to the third session of our cloud jam today. I have not. Hmm.
You know what? That's the scenario you just presented there. That's a potential interview question in some places. How do you deal with difficult people? I don't know I don't know the good answer to that, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I know.
Let there be coffee. Let there be water. Let there be light.
It was great. I liked it. All right, sharing the screen. So I just created the Kubernetes cluster. So here's my task 2 script. Nothing really fancy. Echo statements and then the actual G-Cloud commands. So everything that we did before manually, but it just saves us some time on the redo. All right. So if I go and validate, all right. So I will rapidly go through those. And one thing I'm gonna do because I'm in my shell is actually do a little bit differently. So I'm gonna throw in some variables. So because you've already seen that I have a script for task 3. So setting a variable for template, setting a variable for M type, setting machine type, my target pool, and my instance group. So first command, we're going to create that template instance or the instance template. So let me go ahead and do that. So, and using my variables to call the type and the template. So there's my template. Going to create the target pool. So the framework for my 2 web servers, and they're going to be in a target pool. The various commands following will use the target pool to reference the instances. All right, now I'm going to create the actual instance groups from the template. So now I'm creating the instances from the template. So the base name for that is nucleus-server. Yeah, I think it came out just as the base. I think it came from the template name. Yeah, I think I left that out, the cut and paste. So let me post that. Yeah. So if I actually go to the G-Cloud console and look at the instances, what that will do. Yes. And so there are my instances all showing up with that nucleus name. I think last time they actually came up and they were like web server group dash and then uniqueness. All right. So now we do the firewall. Firewall gives all of my instances HTTP access or TCP port 80. So if I was to grab those IP addresses again, all right. All right, now next is the setting up the forwarding rule for the load balancer. And you'll see in my cut and paste, I'm referencing variables for various things. Mm-hmm. No, this is the forwarding rule. So once I create when I create the load balancer, this is going to be the redirection to from the load balancer to the backend web servers. In this session, I haven't done it. I haven't done it this section yet. No problem. And I could have realistically within the task, I probably should have done this last because my load balancer doesn't exist yet. I haven't built it. And next is the health check for my service. So checking port 80, the default of the service or the web page or the root, whatever you want to call it. And this is assigning my managed group instances to check the port or assign them to my health check, basically. G-Cloud Compute instance groups managed, set name port, then my instance group, and the name port HTTP or TCP port 80. Sure can, because that's a lot. And I definitely, you go in and looking at the help for G-Cloud Compute Instance Group Manage, and then doing the help on the set port. There's various different ways you can assign that, but going this way with the HTTP check of 80 was probably the easiest. Of which one? Gotcha. I'll post all of my variables that I used here. Mm. There you go.
So, Cedric, quick question. Just looking at the commands that if given, you do a G Cloud compute instant templates, and then you create the web server template, right?
Yes.
After that, you do instance groups, create instance group.
Yes.
So, instance group in this case would be okay, web.
So I can just go back up.
And then you do the firewall rules, right?
Yes.
So create firewall, allow TCP port 80, and then you do the forwarding rules.
Yes.
Uh, what's the command for creating the target pool then?
The target pool, it's G-Cloud compute target pools with an S, create, then target pool.
Okay.
And so even though I had the variable showing here, it'd be nucleus dash pool is what I used.
Okay, and this should be created where? Like before the instance groups?
Yes, because the instance group create references the target pool.
Okay.
Right, so next, I've got my pool rule, load balancer, health check, instances assigned to it. Now we're going to go ahead and create that backend service to the redirect to the target pool from our load balancer. So this becomes a lot. G-Cloud compute backend service, create the web backend protocol HTTP. We apply the health check, the HTTP basic health check, and it's globally defined. And most important thing here is that your regions and zones must be the same in order for this to match. And now that we have that backend defined, we now put the instance group into that list. So we've created a service and now we assign it to the instant group. Super long string of command. G-Cloud compute backend service. Add the backend, our name, the web-backend, and then the instance group that is going to participate there. So our instant group, and then the group zone. And again, globally defined. Oh, yes. So now our two web servers are defined as a backend service, and they're in the group, and the health check is assigned to it to make sure that they're actually servicing HTTP. We're going to create the URL map. So GCP compute URL maps, create web-map HTTP, and we point that to the backend service of web backend. So the backend service is now associated. We're going to create the HTTP. Oh, yep. Getting caught up there. Yeah, we're getting close now. All right, now we're going to create the actual HTTP proxy. So, oops, did not paste. So, gcloud compute target HTTP proxy. Create, we provide a name, HTTP load balancer dash or LB dash proxy, and we associate that to our URL map of web dash map dash HTTP. And again, those are names. So we now have that there. And last but not least, a firewall rule for compute forwarding rules create HTTP content, and that's going to be global, and the target is going to be the proxy. And again, port 80. Actually, you know what we didn't do, and I apologize for it now. Well, I wasn't coming back and checking to make sure that these were all there, so we missed like 3 of these. So we have 35 points right now, and we're sitting at creating the global forwarding rule using the HTTP proxy target, and this is my last command to type. So that would be there. So yes, I can go. All right. So, and that last command is posted. I haven't executed it yet. Compute, gcloud compute forwarding rule, create HTTP content rule. So just the name, global, the target HTTP proxy, and the name HTTP LB proxy, and the port of 80. And there you go. So that is there. If I wanted to look inside of my console, I would go to this did this to me the other day. My menu stopped popping out. The menu in the console locked up. Yep. See how the navigation menu just kind of dies on me? So there's my service. So if I go here, oops. Oh, there's my proxy. It's one of my instances. And if I refresh it a couple of times, I get my other server as well. So let me go here.
So it looks like it's doing some kind of round robin, it looks like.
Yes. Yep. And now I pick on it, it won't give me the one. No, that was my jail. That was just the web server itself. And if I go individually to the IP address of one of my instances, of course, I would get itself.
All right. Okay.
But if I use the load balancer, I'd bounce between them. All right. So the load balancer is working. So that means if I go now and do my check, I get my 60%.
Yeah, great.
And we've got 23 minutes left. All right. Anybody have any questions or
yeah, so
want to view
definitely,
anything?
yeah, the idea of using the SDK is a good one because the problem I was running into was my session was running out before I could complete all the tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
right. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. So I was trying to get to it and I was having trouble.
With access, right?
Yeah.
I'm having the same issue here.
And I wonder, is it because I have these other windows up and my incognito's interfering with that. So
Yeah, it was
I'm at
saying that it was it was requiring uh, you need access for access or switch to an account with access. So I'm not
yeah.
quite
And when I tried to switch to an account, it
right.
brought up the student account. So let me close out some of my windows and then try to access it.
I'm trying to access it as my regular Gmail account. So I'm not quite sure which user I ought to be using. Yeah, yeah, sure. I can share my screen. Let me share my screen. Okay. Let me present a tab. Okay, access denied. Here we go. Share. This is what I got. Yeah. Okay, I
Yeah,
did.
I'm getting something similar as well, and I'm only logged in via my standard
Okay.
Gmail account.
You get an email letting you know if the file is shared with you. So let me check my email. All right. did you did you include the email address of everyone? All right. Okay, let's give it a try. All
It
right.
has.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm able to get in now. And then
Right.
I just did a
Yeah.
request for edit access.
No, yeah, I'm in view only mode, but I don't need to edit anything.
Yep, I'm getting the same. I
Request
can
edit.
get there, but it's
Oh, all right. Okay, cool. Uh,
all right.
all right. That looks good. And then how do you erase?
Hi. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Oh,
So, John, did you have a diagram you had before for the? No, I thought when you had the original Jamf board sent out, you had like a diagram already there. All right. Oh, okay. Okay. I just thought that was still available.
that's terrible. But oh well.
Hey guys, I have to take off, but hey, everything awesome, guys. Excellent work, Cedric. Awesome, John. Awesome. It's good to see everybody. Good meeting everyone. Great speaking with everybody. Hi, Laverne.
Hi. Bye.
Bye bye.
Have a good one.
You too.
I'll be back. I'll be back. You know, I'm coming to get my bike. I'm coming to get my bike anyway, John. So when I come pick up mhm. When I come pick up my bike, you know, we'll chop it up, man. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure you get plenty of room. I'm gonna give you a little extra room on the motorcycles. I give you space, at least one motorcycle space to free up, and then you can work. We can work with that. Oh yeah, I looked them up. Ooh, yes, yep, yep. Yes, I do. Pre Jack Black. All right. Well, I apologize again. I mean to cut this short, but I do got to take off. But once again, it's great meeting everybody and seeing everybody again and again. Great work, great progress, guys. Awesome stuff.
All right, have a good one.
Take care.
All right.
Let's see, target pool. So that's just the creating of the cluster, deploying the app, and then the app is a web server. Yes, because then the larger square is the managed service group. And I'm running out of room down here, so then I'm just gonna. Yeah, I'm pretty much done. But realistically, I mean, that's all we need there. There's more commands underneath, but that's what's actually happening there. So Tammy, does that? So, and like I said, the one thing that I want to, and it's good we did this. Each one of the tasks is all separate. So the services that we created on each one is all a self-sustaining within that task. So we create for task 3 specifically, we create that template. We generate the target pool, and then we deploy the instances in the managed group. Each one of those, because of the startup script, has a web server service running on it. We set up the firewall. I guess I could have included that. We set up the firewall to be able to access it. But then we go in and we want to have that load balancer in front of those 2 web servers. So we create that with the URL map. So we generate the external IP. The health check helps balance between the 2 servers. We assign them by the instance group. And now with the load balancer being in place, that URL redirects to either one of the actual instances itself. And John is coming in and helping me out there. Appreciate it. This teamwork stuff is cool.
Mm-hmm.
So the instances are providing that web service. Yeah.
So what's the use of a target pool in this case? I mean, I understand that we created templates to make it easier to create instances, but what does the target pool do in this case?
When I assign the firewall,
Uh-huh.
instead of using instant 1 and instant 2 getting the actual names,
Okay.
because they were assigned to a group,
Okay.
I can just call that group by name, and it's every instance that's in there.
So basically, this block that is encasing instance 1 and instance 2 is target pool, right?
Yes.
So,
Well,
okay.
it's the target pool, it's the managed group, it's all of those combined, because when we created a template, the template references the target pool.
Okay.
So if I came along and I wanted to, let's say I needed another 10 instances.
Okay.
When I use the template, each
Uh-huh.
one of those instances will automatically be assigned to the target pool, which
Okay.
automatically puts them in this group. And that means because they're in the group, then the firewall rule applies to them.
Okay.
So that's the whole purpose of that, versus having to go back and actually having to get each name instance and instant 1, instant 2, instant 3, all the way to how many number.
So basically, it's just to create a kind of an encasing which would apply all the changes that are applied to that to a
Yes.
particular instance.
Yes, an association, or i.e. a group. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Well, so Kubernetes would be different because that would be actually the cluster itself. So for Kubernetes, if you had the health check there, the number of replicas, there's a minimum and maximum number. So if I was below my my minimum number, Kubernetes would actually spin up another instance because I'm below my minimum. That doesn't associate to the compute instances. It's just that I should have within my managed group, I'm going to have X number. So I'm going to have 2. If I want to scale up or scale down, there'd be a command to increase the number, and it would by me calling that command, it would add another instance into the group. Or if I scale down, it would remove an instance. Mm-hmm. No. Yep. Yeah, when I first read it a couple of times, I thought each one of these was growing upon the next task. But yeah, they're all just separate because we did absolutely nothing with the jump host other than we created an instance, and then we just moved on, and then the Kubernetes cluster was there, and we created that, and we did the hello app, and we didn't even, like I said, as far as us going in to check, other than us going back and looking and showing that the hello app was there, that was it. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. So if we went back and referenced the CP not the CPU, the managing which lab was it? Right. Right. So in the setup network and HTTP load balancer, there was a lot of creating the virtual the VPC, and we did 2 different types of load balancers. So there was a lot of examples, but then we didn't use a lot of those settings in here. Because if you go back to setup network and HTTP load balancer, task 2 goes through the example of creating multiple web servers. And then the task 3 comes back and then gives you the experience of creating, no, I'm sorry. It has us manually create 3 instances, and then, what number is it? Task number 5? Yeah, task number 5 actually has us create the instant template and then create the instances. And the reason why is there's a rule about it. When you do hope I'm saying this right. I believe when you create an HTTP load balancer, the only way you can create instances that are associated with that is by using a managed group. And that requires a template. So you have to put all of that in. Yep.
Yeah, I that much I would understand is since we are applying a lot of stuff on the group, like the health checks and stuff like that. It makes sense. But why do we need to create a template to make the target pool? Can't we
Why do we
like?
need the target pool? Because the when we create the template, the command that I use to create the template
Uh-huh.
actually references a target pool. So
Okay.
if you look back at, I did G-Cloud Compute Instant Group Manage Create.
Uh-huh.
I gave the size, the template, and a target pool within there as an option. So the flip side of using target pool, I could have done the named instances. So instead of target pool, I could have done -- instance, and I would have to add each instance, each CPU instance in there.
Okay.
So it's an option. I didn't have to use it, but
Okay. So when are you saying we need to use a template? Like, is there any particular case?
yes. So creating a instance group
Mhm.
requires a template.
Okay. And isn't target pool an instance group?
No,
Okay.
a target pool is a group of instances.
Okay. So what's the difference between an instance group and a group of instances?
No, a target pool is a group of instances. And a group of instances that are all configured the same.
Okay, so the managed group basically requires a template.
Yes.
Okay.
So, because I'd expect, like in our diagram here, we have two instances. They're going
Mhm.
to be Debian machine types with the executed startup script running the web server.
Okay.
So if I come in and I spin up another instance from the template, it's
Yeah.
going to belong to this managed group of VMs, and they're all configured the same.
Okay.
Oh, all right, no problem. Sorry.
And yep, and like I said, I call out the setup network and HTTP load balancers. Definitely go back through that one. If you haven't done that one already, there's a lot of cool networking commands and script that you go in and set up there for this configuration. So I think it's cool.
Oh, okay. No, I plan to go back and do the rest of the labs, but just wondering.
Because to me that'll make more sense when you go in. The first thing you do is create 3 individual instances.
Mhm.
So you'll see that deployment, and then you create the template in the managed group, and then you'll turn around and you'll create 2 instances based off of that. So it's more or less steps, and it's more controlled.
Okay, but are there any drawbacks to the fact that you have the managed group versus using individual instances then? Other than the fact that, okay, we're using the same kind of machines.
So the only drawback is if you wanted to make a change to one of those instances, like you wanted instance number 1 to have more memory,
Yeah.
just for whatever reason, like if you wanted to um I guess unbalance your load balance, like you wanted one machine to do more, so you gave it more CPU and memory.
Okay.
Because it's in a managed group,
Uh-huh.
you cannot change the one.
Oh, okay.
because any changes for the group would be for all.
Got it. So ideally, in this case, you would have like a separate instance and then a managed group and then you have the load balancer then? No.
Yes. And of course, you'd have to go in. You'd have to go in and do more configurations for that, but that's not covered here. But
Oh, okay.
but
Just
yeah,
logically, just wondering how that would work.
mm-hmm.
And is there any like use case scenario which would kind of work in something like this? Because I'm wondering, wouldn't it just be easier to have a managed group and have like multiple instances of the same type and do the load balancing versus having like one particular instance with more memory or something? I mean,
So let's say you have your resources maybe in different regions, and maybe in one region you have more or less resources being consumed there.
Okay.
So it might make sense to have more load balancers in a certain area versus another. And you talk about you talk into about the consumption of resources, like your cost. How much does it cost to run multiple instances versus a single instance with more resources?
Okay. It just boils down to cost in the end.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I would say about that. And then like we have the health checks and stuff like that. You also get into like monitoring. So you could look at see how much traffic you're actually going, and then you can make some decisions around that. And then things like cloud functions that we could then apply to this to scale up or scale down and make those type of adjustments. So there's all types of like more complex things that you can do.
Okay. Got it.
And I think John, and I'll reference John on this because he talks about the quick labs and stuff like that we're going doing. But if we were to come around and come up with a project and actually outside of this build and try some of these things, these are all good scenarios to go and look and see. But don't want to generate a cost if we don't have to.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
All right. We have just a couple of seconds here. We're going to move over to the next session here very shortly. Function of Kubernetes.
Yes, hello. It's 7 o'clock here. Hmm? 7 o'clock in the evening. It's the start of the evening. Mhm.
I think that's good. Okay. So one thing I want to say real quick is, so next week we have the last one. I think we agreed to do 4. Is that what we said, John? Because I'm okay with going on into the next, selecting another quest and going through that. Um, just depends on which one we want to look at. Hmm. Um, I think I'd want to do 1 week because I also want to I do want to cut away some time and make sure that we're going in and we're actually looking at the requirements for the ACE exam. And with what we've done the past 3 weeks and my self study, I feel pretty confident with the Kubernetes setup and the compute instance. So I definitely want to look at cloud functions and the app engine and kind of either do some labs or just have some general discussion around that in the coming weeks, I guess. So I don't know how that ties into the quick labs or the dev fest, but mhm. Okay.
With
Because I'm even okay with that. Like even if we didn't do a request, we just did a couple of the cloud function type labs and just kind of taught through it. I think that would be good. Like the Google Map one. What was it? Mapping New York, the New York subway. I think that was a real good one. There's like two that I within this section that I was looking at. The perform of foundational infrastructure tasks. Some of those labs we've already done, and then the deploy and manage. But I think deploy and manage kind of expands upon the create resources here. So we do a little bit more with identification management in that one. Um, See, I think the next one because it has the cloud pub sub and it actually has cloud functions in it. I'm game for that.
That sounds good. Building up skills. I was trying to remember how much time before the Dev Fest started. It's October, right? Or okay, great. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I wish I had somebody to tell me that like a year ago when I did that. Right. So yeah, but it's what it is, and you just have to you know learn to learn to live with it. But definitely, a quick lab is is a great tool to get familiarized with all these services. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Frederick. Cedric, sorry, Cedric. I really appreciate your diligence in doing a lot of the pre-work and making us benefit from that.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not up to that level yet, so hopefully I'll be able to get up to speed in the not too distant future and be able to you know do such a good job like Cedric did today.
Yep. The challenge is what I accepted there to go in and do it to really go in, and I like this stuff. This is fun stuff. So
Right. One thing I'm kind of curious because Google emphasizes so much security these days. So that particular exercise we went through, I'm kind of curious why they didn't maybe extend it a bit to use SSL. What are your thoughts?
I believe within these labs, this was just introductory.
Okay,
So if you look through some of the other labs, there's a lot of other labs that are definitely intermediate and advanced.
okay,
And so you'll see some more of those of scenarios. One thing I was thinking about this week while I was doing my prep was how do I go in and actually submit suggestions for labs.
right.
So there's a link in the support for Quick Labs that if you have an idea for a lab, you can actually submit those ideas.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Because I like doing automation and things like that. So me going in and doing those scripts, um, you'll see that there's labs with what's called Terraform,
Yes.
and so it goes through some tutorials with doing that. And like I said, those are like more the intermediate. But my tool of choice for that is Ansible.
Ansible.
So
Okay.
I've definitely thought about it this week to make some recommendations for some quick start Ansible and G-Cloud labs, because I was working on that earlier this week. You have to set up um, a service account in order to get your automation to work, but going through those steps and having a lab for that, I think would be like really cool. So
All right. Makes sense. Yeah. All right. I'm sure it will get to that point someday.
yeah.
Yeah, guys, it's been a really productive morning. Thanks again, Cedric. And today's my mom's birthday. I need to try to call her. She's 8 hours away in Nigeria.
Oh,
So
happy birthday, Mom. Awesome.
yeah. So I need to get the kids ready to sing her happy birthday. So
Awesome.
so with that, thanks everyone, and we'll catch up later.
Yeah.
All righty.
Bye.
Okay.
Look for next week. We'll be here then.
All right. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.
Take a screenshot before everybody drops off. Yes. All right. Don't forget to stop the streaming.